Okay, right. Welcome to everybody tuning into the Everyday Martial Arts podcast with me, the Dark Master. Super excited to have Mr. Adam Woodhouse as a guest on this podcast. We go back a long way. Hopefully, he'll explain a little bit about that. I have massive respect for him in many, many ways. And I can honestly say that he's been a huge influence in my life as a young instructor, and like I always say, there are students that teach me. Well, all my students teach me something, but he certainly taught me a lot about myself. So I'd like to thank him for that. So welcome to you, Adam. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you very much, Master G. It's an honour to be here, and that's very kind words you're saying there. That's pretty touched by that.
Well, they come from the heart, and as I say, over the years teaching, certain students they have an impact, and I'm sure you teach as well. I'm sure you have you feel this yourself, and I think that for me as an instructor, I need to sort of almost feel that feedback, a positive feedback. And I always got a positive feedback from you and many other students as well, that actually this was worth doing and it was worth teaching. But I love
yeah, indeed.
But right, I'm gonna knock straight into it. We may have to do this in two parts, as we were talking earlier, just off camera, because if you don't have enough time. But I'm gonna ask you a little bit, like I ask everyone, to tell us a little bit about your martial arts journey, because I know it's taken a few turns, and I always understand, as I said before, this could take 5 hours. Everybody's martial arts journey is very different, and if you've been training a while or you've been in the martial arts a while, it can take some time. But tell us a little bit about that anyway.
Well, I dabbled in kickboxing before I came to yourself. So this is back in, I was just sort of my last year of school, so sort of 85. Did about a year of kickboxing before I came to you, and that's where I'm. After about a year of doing that, I started the taekwondo. So I was doing them both for a little bit of a while. The kickboxing was, I mean, obviously, it's easy once you go to your first class to be very blinkered into what you're doing.
Yeah, sure.
I met Corin Armstrong through a friend of mine.
Oh wow.
And he's talking to me about martial arts, and we were chatting, and I just came along to the taekwondo, and I could fit them both in. And obviously, being very young and young and fit, and having lots of time on my hands, I started to do them both regularly. It was about 6 months later that I realised that taekwondo was more for me. At the time, maybe it's down to my build, or also very much liked the sort of psychology aspect of it, the discipline, and there's a lot of courtesy going on. Whereas the kickboxing was a little bit less involved in that way. And I think at the time, being like 15, I was 16 when I started the taekwondo. It was, and obviously, skinny I was. I think about 8 stone or something. I probably, the kickboxing was probably a little bit tough for me as being that sort of light. So yeah, I mean, after did the taekwondo, as you know, for about just 10 years, 11 years, I think. And that was a very, very, very long, big learning curve. I mean, wow. Lots of growth. And that time of life is a big sort of cycle for growth anyway.
Yeah.
Just sort of early adulthood. And sorry, I'm just reminiscing about things in my head.
I've just taken my headphone. I was getting a bit of feedback on my side, so I'm just taking it off. I think it's better. I'll use the computer audio, but no, it's okay. But it is an interesting time, because I mean, I started at 16, and so I can sort of understand where you're coming from. I remember going into my first class, and obviously, I would say at that time martial arts was I wouldn't say new, but you had the influence of the Bruce Lee movies and whatever. Everybody thought they were going to go in and you were going to be a black belt within a week. Then you realise that you had to do quite a lot of work, and you had to stand still and in those days not sort of chuckle in the class and be quite strict, and it was completely different. But I've said to a few people on this on this podcast and talking to guests that actually for me, I loved it. From my first session that I started, I remember walking home thinking, that was great. Really, really enjoyed it. And I won't say I was completely hooked then, but it certainly didn't take me long to do that. But it wasn't necessarily the martial arts side for me. It was the fact that I don't know. There seemed to be so much to it. It gave me a focus and something that it was obviously something that I needed at the time because once I started doing it, I mean, I couldn't stop. On a nightly basis, I'll be out there, doing my patterns and stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was a similar thing for you.
Well, I think that's what I was sort of reminiscing about when it actually really hooked me. I think it was about green belts. By green belt, I was hooked. So about a year of training with yourself.
Yeah.
I really started to go, wow, this is fantastic. I mean, it was before that, but I think green belt was a big sort of stepping stone, new belt, and then the sort of psychological element that goes with getting that new belt. And obviously green's a darker color than the yellow, and it really separates you from the white belts then, whereas the yellow belt's only one away. I know you've got the tags as well, but it really does separate you from the beginners. It sort of symbolizes a whole year as well.
Yeah.
And I think coming in and doing well in tournaments, in the tournament aspect of it then, and started to sort of shine, and engravings as well with the APAS system and what have you. And it was only when I got to blue tag that I was actually, you asked me to start teaching with you with the kids down in Bath. It's weird because I was just thinking about this when I was sort of reminiscing earlier, and at the time I don't think that anything really clicked in me that I thought it was anything special. I mean, to be actually asked at that grade to teach was a bit. Now I look back, it's like, wow, okay, it's my sort of knowledge that I'd collected by then was minimal at best, and it's just. Sorry, my computer's making noises. Is that on the audio as well? Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I had a little bit of feedback. I don't know if it was on me or you. So
that should be turned off now. Apologies about that. Yeah.
Okay, no worries. Well, it's funny because I remember seeing you in class and thinking, wow, you were really passionate about it, and it brought back memories of myself because I actually started teaching at the same. I was a green belt when my instructor,
okay.
Yeah, asked me to take the class, so I thought, oh, okay, wow. So teaching, and it was. I'm assuming he must have saw something in me and thought, well, actually, he's really keen. Let's get him going. And I think also, particularly at that time, for me as an instructor, trying to find people with a sort of similar passion for what I was doing was quite a goal actually, and it did make me very happy to see someone. Wow, this guy really loves this, and we'll try and get him in the fold and get him part of it. But no, it was good. It was good for me because I think as an instructor, and I'm sure instructors listening to this, you'll sort of teach a class and you'll give some instruction, whatever, and then the next session, a lot of people will come back, and some people they've practiced it because you can see it. Some people they've just gone home and watched Coronation Street.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you think, right, okay, and then all of a sudden the other people that have watched Coronation Street are calling the people that have gone home and worked on it lucky. Oh, you're really lucky. You're a natural.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a combination of being natural and having that sort of continued sort of self-learning on top of the class is definitely what sort of is a thing that really shows. Yeah.
Sure. But after, I mean, so we're still on question one of many. But after that, I know that once you left Taekwondo, you went to do sort of other things. What was your journey then?
Well, the next sort of stage was still a color belt, quite a very big stage. Was when I got to blue belt. You asked me to go and teach with you in the 8.
Yes.
And then that was not like the green belt. That was something I suddenly went, okay, this is not the same.
Hmm.
Because at Green Belt, when you were asking me to teach, it seemed very casual to me. It was at the same club. I was there anyway. I'd always turn up early, and it was the kids. You were getting me to teach the kids. But when you were Blue Belt, and you said, "Oh, how do you feel about coming up to Yate every Tuesday?" It was like, wow, okay. And obviously, I was a lot more passionate about it at that time anyway. And that was like a real sort of, whoa, yeah, that was a massive sort of leap in my. I mean, obviously, I would have continued to be really enthusiastic, but that really changed it. I felt, going in, I was starting to teach adults as well. And it was definitely a big step in as a self-confidence thing. I mean, we'll talk about that's a very big step that we can talk about later. I think that's on one of the other sort of questions later, about how it's affected me. But yeah, Blue Belt was a huge thing. In many ways, one, it's called a senior grade, even though it sort of isn't really. I'd say Black Belt is sort of, well, it's sort of halfway. Different perceptions on it, I guess. I think when you've been training a long time, Blue Belt, after a year and a half, it doesn't seem like anything. I'm not knocking any Blue Belts out there. Fair play to you. But that was a Blue Belt was as big a step as Black Belt for me because of that element. And obviously when I got my first Dan under Master Cho, that was very special as well. And shortly after that started opening my own club over in South Bristol, over in Keynsham. That was and getting my actual 100% my students, because obviously before that it was always teaching other people's students, and it's never quite the same, as you know. It's a different feel. Yes. The first time getting my first students to a grading and just being, these are 100% my creations, as it were. That was a huge, very, very big stepping stones there. Obviously got my second Dan, but it was after that. But it was maybe 6 months after the second Dan that one of the big things that changed my perceptions on martial arts was in a seminar with Willie Lim, and being knocked out by a Shuto, knife and guarding block, and being knocked out by that, and I just went, wow. And I'd heard about this sort of things before, but they were from different systems. But as he was a Taekwondo master, that sort of made it a little bit different for me, and that was where my pursuit of that sort of thing started. Going on, and after did my third degree, which was possibly in 95 maybe.
Okay.
I'd sort of, it's like we've said before about steps of learning, and about how many patterns do you really sort of need to know. How many times do you need to repeat the same technique in a low grade pattern, and then again it's repeated in the high grade pattern. Like, this is everywhere. It really sort of started. I started to drift away from the sports, totally away from sparring side of it, and much more getting into the sort of the bunkai, which is quite popular these days. I've noticed people, the older applications of things, and that's what that sort of made me end up drifting away. It's pursuit of looking at the correct posture for those type of things, which don't necessarily teach you to have a good posture, sort of skeletal position for good health and life, but for combative, it's a lot more protective and a lot more different, rather than this shoulder back and this what is generally seen as a good posture, but it's not for that particular element. So I just decided, it was a very big step at the time when you consider it was almost my sole income.
Yes.
Going from teaching my club, and I had 3 sessions a week there, to leaving that behind and teaching something which would never have that many students in, of course. So it was a very big step, and I mean, sometimes I thought it was a big mistake, but I don't sort of regret it. But it's going off on my own and leaving an association, which is always it's a difficult thing, especially as a young man. And maybe I was a bit arrogant at the time. I but probably, I don't know. I'd like to think not, but I think I'm probably wrong.
Well, I think one thing that I've realised, having been in the martial arts for a long time, is that one size certainly doesn't fit all, and particularly once you've been in it a long time. You know, I've taken my martial arts in, for want of a better word, other directions. You know, when I was into the sport side of martial arts, I wasn't particularly into the philosophy or whatever, but now I am. And you know, I look a lot more at that type of thing, and you know, I do a bit of meditation, which I would never have been able to do, you know, in the early 90s. That certainly wasn't. Sitting still for 10 minutes meditating was definitely not me. Whereas now, I actually see it as quite a big part of my martial art, for example.
Sure.
Know, talk about that a bit later. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. You know, a lot of people go, oh well, okay. I think I can't remember who it was. It was a senior grade at the time spoke to me and said that you know, some people will train to green belt and get what they want from it. Some people will train to black belt, go and get what they want from it. Some people will get what they want from it from fourth degree, and some people will keep going and continue to get different things from it. You know, as we get older, you know, our thoughts change. You know, certainly me as a young person, I didn't start martial arts to be a competitor, but I find that actually that I was quite good at it. And became a competitor and did fairly well. But that wasn't the reason that I carried on doing my taekwondo. You know, if somebody said to me when I was at that height of my competition time, sorry, you can't compete anymore, I'd have gone, yeah, okay, and carried on doing it because I love doing it. But you know, and I think that for me at that time, I hadn't got what I wanted out of it. And it wasn't competing. It wasn't that I realised that actually. That was just something that I happened to be very good at. But the point I'm making is that I think as instructors as well, we have to accept that at some point, some person will, you know, a person that perhaps you think is going to stay forever will say, actually, I've got what I want from this now. I'm going to go somewhere else to get something different.
Sure.
And that was hard. Well, that was hard for me to accept at the time. But now I'm a bit older and a bit more mature, and I can see things from a different perspective. I understand that. And I think we all need to accept that as instructors, you know, and realise that actually we've had a reasonable input into this individual, and they are who they are, you know, because they've perhaps had a bit of input from us or whatever. You know, I'm not saying that in an arrogant way.
Oh no, I'd say reasonable's an understatement, but
yeah. I mean, go on.
I think when you're saying about just thinking about the inputs, I don't know how to put it. When you say about the input from yourself was massive. I mean, you bear in mind the age I was at 16, very easily influenced, and obviously in some places that could be very bad.
Yes.
But easily influenced by, you were always very calm and very, very technical and very good at explaining how things and why things work. And there was one thing that made me want to be better is there always seemed to be a silent expectation that you wanted us to, we should know a bit more, we should be a bit better at this, but it was never anything said by you. Right. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to get at there. But it was always like, right, okay, we've got to do something. We've got to. I mean, I used to chat with Corin and Lawrence about this.
Yeah.
As well. Well, Lawrence is another person who's a big influence. We influence each other massively, of course. And it was like this. Oh, but Master Gale or Mr. Gale at the time was. It was, you know, you'd been mentioned quite a lot outside of the class when we were together, and it was quite,
well,
big influence, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's nice to know that. And the funny thing was, you know, you're talking about for those listening, Lawrence Ori was another student of mine at the same time as Adam, and you know, they were both sort of good friends, and both very, very passionate about martial arts. In fact, I think I'm actually going to try and get Lawrence to do this. He's in Holland, does Aikido now, and I think he's enjoying that. But yeah, it is. It's nice to know, and I teach some of the instructors. I say, listen, you know, you can make a massive difference in someone's life. You know, a positive difference. And you know, if you're gonna teach, then you need to make sure that the difference that you make is a positive one and not a negative one. You know, as much as possible. So that's good to know. Like I said, this maybe we'll have to do 10 of these because this first question has taken a while, but that's all right. No, I love it because it's important to I think for people to know you know where I've been in the past and where we've both been. But go on, carry on. You said about
I mean, even on this question, it could go on forever. And Lawrence is a massive influence on my training. We graded more or less at the same time. Sure. We ended up living together, and he ended up being my assistant instructor.
Yes.
And even though we worked on exactly the techniques in the same way, often like every day in the week, you know, we'd be doing our martial arts, making our hip twist strong, checking this, sparring, and so you know, all of it really. We've since Lawrence moved away from England, and we sort of lost contact, and recently got back into contact. But it's funny, he's gone to the opposite end of the spectrum. We're both very similar in our training, and then he's gone to Aikido. I've gone into more combatives, and it's quite different how like diametrically opposed the training has ended up from being along the same line and then just totally opposite end of the scale. It's quite interesting. It's
Well, I suppose, like I say, you know, I said before, it's, you know, you decide, okay, I've had what I need from this, and then I'm going to go here or go something slightly different. You know, I've done that myself, really. You know, I mentioned before on this podcast, I've done a bit of Tai Chi, and I wanted to do a sort of soft martial art, something slightly different, and that was quite an experience as well. But what about moving on from there? Your next part of your journey?
I'm open. This is the thing about when I left teaching the Taekwondo. I mean, I didn't have a super successful club or anything like that, but I needed to think about earning money in a different way as well. So when I because of what I was teaching, it's always the idea of like pressure testing. And I wrote an article not long ago about pressure testing martial arts for reality. Sure. And this is one of the things, I mean, I really thought I knew what I was doing. And I think through pure luck and what have you, I didn't actually get hurt. So I went on to be a bouncer for like as a full-time job I did that for about 15 years. And obviously I'm not like a big guy, like I was probably about 12 stone at the time, which was obviously tiny for a bouncer. I've only got little hands and little wrists and what have you. I'm not like genetically strong or what have you. And that was a massive sort of eye-opener. And it's very interesting looking at things like the British Combat Association, the application of how to use martial arts and what have you, and it's invaluable. Yes, that was a very big eye-opener. And my martial arts as what I teach and how I train has changed since the beginning of that, right up to the end of it. And even since when I stopped doing door work back in 2011, maybe, even since then, and getting out of that sort of inviting violence to your own doorstep, effectively, it's my training, I'm just continuously learning it. It's utterly fascinated by that element of it, which is essentially what the physical element of it is, what it's about. And it's easy. I got a bit of a sort of doing martial arts and being a bouncer. People ended up thinking I might have been a bit thuggish and what have you, even though I was always overtly polite. I think that surprised a few doormen I was working with, how courteous I was with people and the difference it can actually make, rather than someone's, especially back in the 90s, it's pre the modern sort of jurisdiction, the sort of national jurisdiction. It was all local jurisdictions at the time. Violence was quite sort of high on the agenda for the doorman. So approaching it with a bit of a softer approach. Well, it's the sort of thing that not only I think it's the right thing to do, but it's something that probably saved me having my not very hefty body getting a bit of a battering very often. But yeah, that was a massive self-test in against fears and things like that. It's
sure.
I really didn't know what I was doing. I thought I'll be all right. First night it was like, okay. but by then it's something I was sort of invested in doing. But it is to actually pressure test without doing any like controlled pressure testing really in my own class or in any type of training, apart from like sort of heavy-ish sparring, which is obviously completely like other end, sort of a different end of the scale from real violence. It was that was a massive step, and they ahead of me there were huge steps, and I didn't realize it at the time. I thought, oh, just a few steps and everything will be all right. It's like, wow, okay, I'm learning more. And the thing is, back then YouTube wasn't really a thing, so there was no, I could read things. You go to a few seminars here and there, sometimes run by people who didn't really know what they were doing either. So you sort of, that's a huge sort of step in sort of awakening to the physical element of the martial arts. And one thing I haven't mentioned is the sort of, you're saying the sort of psychological element that martial arts does to you, the self-confidence, the tenets of something, even though I'm not a Taekwondo practitioner, I haven't been for 25 years or so, there's something which everyone, forget martial artists, everyone should do. They're amazing things. You can apply them all to being a bouncer as well. And they, I didn't go through them in my head, but they were so ingrained by then.
Sure.
That they're massive. They're a massive help. And obviously in normal everyday life, they're brilliant things.
Well, just excuse me, for those listening in Taekwondo, because this is a podcast, is a multi-style thing, but for those listening, we have our tenets of Taekwondo, which is courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. And those tenets are the things that we're trying to achieve and get closer to through our training. So that's what Adam's referring to there when he's talking about the tenets of Taekwondo. That is interesting, because I think when I got to interview General Che, he mentioned that perhaps if he had started doing Taekwondo again, he would put more emphasis on the tenets earlier. I know we tend to learn them, but we tend to learn them as just something to pass our grading. As parrot.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah,
you read it and go, right, I must learn these. Forget about it. It's just you learn it, but you forget about the meaning of it.
Exactly.
But, as I said at the beginning about going from the kickboxing to the Taekwondo, it was you get that sort of, especially the discipline, the courtesy side of things. It was a lot more evident. I mean, obviously back then it was a bit more like kickboxing back then when we started anyway. It was a lot rougher. But the whole, the tenets are sort of, I think they were evident because the Bath Club was, it was very big at the time, wasn't it?
It was.
And line up and everyone just went lined up really quickly, grade order, people sort the grades out, and then everyone stood there in the ready position. And the first time watching it, it's like, wow. Okay. And it's saying that you sort of learn the tenets and forget the words, but I think they were sort of ingrained in you over time in the training without actually having to think about the words. I've always sort of, without using the tenets. I think when I first started teaching my own system, I think I used the tenets for a while. But after a while, I think it's sort of to reinforce what I'm saying. I think people just did adhere to them without even knowing them, because it was the way that people were courteous to each other, and if they weren't, they were out. I have actually kicked people out of the class a few times because they weren't the right type of people. But yeah, that's interesting, and maybe it's something that should be written down. I mean, maybe it's something I'm missing. Even these days, it's you carry on learning, isn't that right, Master G? Yeah.
Well, you certainly well, you should do. People should do it. It should be a learning experience. Life is, learn by experience. Certainly, it should be the same with martial arts as well.
Yeah.
I think when you feel that you can't learn anymore, then you probably need to just do something else, because you're not getting it, so to speak. Well, my feel free to share any more, because this is fantastic. I'm loving this, by the way. Learning about your thoughts, but I know your journey has probably taken you from there a little bit further as well. Obviously, you did the door work, and now you're running your own school. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention about that.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think because of when I first started my own system, it was very regimented. It was very much, you could almost tell it I was from a Taekwondo background, or possibly a sort of traditional karate background. By the way I taught, there was grades, people wore suits, gis, doboks, had no footwear on. These days, I get people to wear footwear always, because of the nature of what it's for, and to enable you to get used to it. Sometimes I get them to get their backpack on or their jacket on, so they get used to, suddenly they've got that sort of standard everyday encumbrance they might have for when they're doing their techniques. They don't do this always, but I often do bag work with my bag on, with a hat on even, because as soon as it gets knocked, it does make a difference to the whole thing. So just making things as difficult for you sort of as possible, and running certain scenarios within the class, of having someone being aggressive with you, sort of simulating sort of lead up to an attack, and you're actually holding hands with someone who could be a child, could be a loved one, and you've got to try and they squeeze your hand, because when someone's scared, they might squeeze your hand, and then that hand is half tied up, and just trying to sort of step fully away from any wearing of any sort of uniform, and adding to the lack of uniform to what you're wearing, those little difficult situations, like I was saying about holding of the hands, or this type of thing, just to try and because you could have a top ranking martial artist, and then suddenly he's realized he's trying to do something. He's got a pair of jeans on and a pair of boots and a jacket and a bag on maybe, or he's holding the hand, or so any other myriad of different scenarios, and they suddenly realize they've got no chance of moving how they used to.
Sure.
Even normal footwork with shoes on is quite different. And then you've got things like, especially over in Bath, where the pavements aren't level, and that's where I did most of my door work. And it's one of the things that really woke me up to the idea of doing stuff that isn't on a flat floor. Because the pavement edgings there, a lot of the pavements are very old and they're all a bit buckled, and I've almost tripped over. And that can even if you're winning the sort of fight, it can suddenly change to you being in a lot of trouble. So yeah, just sort of trying to create difficult scenarios to make the training a bit more awkward. It's a totally different sort of perception onto it. Sorry, a lot of them. I'm trying to think of other things.
No, that's fine. Well, what I was going to say there, because we're probably out of time on this one, but what I'm going to say is we're going to record part 2 directly after this. For those listening, I'll be putting these on in different intervals, so we'll have part 1, part 2, and so on. Maybe we'll by the sounds of it, we're going to get to a lot of parts, which is great, because this is what this is about. So
is this question 1 still?
This is question 1, but that's okay. That's okay.
I still got about, I don't know. Okay.
That's fine. For those listening, this is question 1, and we're going to end question 1 there, and we're going to come on to question 2 soon. So you'll get another episode, and we'll see how far we get. So I'm just going to say goodbye to those people listening to this one. Hopefully you'll listen to number 2 with Mr. Adam Woodhouse. It's been fantastic, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thank you.